There's nothing like an Aussie road trip, and they don't get a whole lot bigger than traversing the outback. Except this time round, we're not bothering with Toyota Land Cruisers and Nissan Patrols. We're going for an electric car, and a very quick one at that. The start line is here in Darwin, where we're soaking up some of the most spectacular coastal scenery Australia has. But it's soon going to get dusty, dry and very, very red. For this trip, we're heading south along the Stuart Highway before tacking east to Mount Isa. We'll then hit the red dirt and make our way through some truly iconic outback towns, the sorts of places that don't see a whole lot of electric cars. But it's inevitable that EVs will be going to every corner of the country sometime in future. And that's what this test is about, seeing if an electric car can deal with the challenges and punishment that Aussie roads do so well. The claimed range of the Cross Turismo 4S is 469 kilometres. That's certainly decent, although in the Northern Territory you can travel at up to 130 kilometres an hour in a lot of places. And at those speeds, you're using more energy to push more air out of the way. So we're expecting to get less range in the real world. Most EV owners would be familiar with the various charging options available in suburban areas and on major routes, but out here there's very little of that. For that, it's important that you come prepared, ensuring you've got the hardware to be able to use those bigger plugs. So the Taycan we're in is the 4S, obviously Cross Turismo with the sort of wagonette style body. They do 3 versions of this that are faster, significantly quicker, but I'll tell you what, this thing, standard trim, 360 kilowatts, 650 Newton meters. For launch control, we'll get up to 420 kilowatts of power, but it's the torque that makes overtaking so easy. The full 650 Newton meters really comes in handy when you're overtaking road trains, for example. Squeeze the throttle and it's so effortless. On these outback roads, it's a different style of driving. You're looking way ahead a lot, ensuring that you're spotting not only caravans and road trains, but wildlife. It's sort of refreshing driving a non-SUV out here. Typically you're used to sitting up really high, getting a commanding view of the road, but with that comes compromises. You get a car that wants to lean and lurch around a bit. This one is rock steady. It feels like it's just going to eat up any corner, and you've got this amazing stability in a straight line. So awesome and a bit refreshing. But the one thing you have to be super aware of is the remaining driving range and how far you've got to travel. I find myself regularly checking that range predictor to ensure that we won't be left short. The best bit is that in some ways you can play with that remaining range. If there's not enough, you just back off the pace. Even pulling it back to 100 or 110 k's an hour will see the estimated range gradually creep up. I'd love to be able to go into details about what the handling of this car is like, but the reality is we just don't have many roads to genuinely test that. We're sort of just straight to the point where every now and again on the dash it flashes up to take control of the steering. So basically you're pretty much not putting in any steering input for hundreds of meters, if not kilometers, and the car thinks you've taken your hand off the steering wheel when you actually haven't. But of course the big appeal with Birdsville is its surroundings. Half an hour to the west of town is the huge big red sand dune, but we want to see if the Taycan is up to the sandy challenge. First up is lowering the tyre pressures to maximise the contact patch between the tyre and the sand, in turn improving the grip. While some of the locals were dubious, the Taycan did it pretty easily. And once we made it, we couldn't resist a little sandy celebration. And now the dirt begins. I guess up until now, the bulk of this trip has been about trying to get to the next charge, and it's been relatively easy for the most part. There's been a couple of challenges, but we've got it done. Now we're trying to not only look after the charge, we've got an enormous challenge ahead of us trying to get to some of the most remote towns in Australia, but also look after tyres. Let's face it, these tyres are designed for high performance, they're designed for racetracks, they're designed for autobahns, they're designed for doing 240 kilometres an hour plus. We're putting them over some of the toughest roads in the world. This is one of our most challenging stretches. We've got almost 400 kilometres to Windora, and the biggest town along the way, if you can call it that, is Betoota. It's more of a pub than a town, really. A very cool pub at that. Remote outposts like Betoota don't have 3-phase power, so it's slow charging, which creates its own challenges. But as long as you've got time, you can ultimately get it done. The options for charging on this trip have been really varied. In some places we've had pretty fast DC charging, so that obviously makes it a lot easier to plan. But for the most part, we're dealing with three-phase power. We've got to roll into town and either check out PlugShare or go and find a business that's got three-phase and try and buy some electricity off them. So here, for example, we're in a showground. They've actually got a few three-phase outlets. We're pulling 21 kilowatts, which is brilliant. Works nicely. Weirdly, once you get to Longreach in outback Queensland, the charging challenges seem to almost disappear. Country New South Wales somehow feels like a world away from the outback. It also takes us through some fantastic towns, including Bathurst. It would be fantastic to be here on race day, but for us, our race now is into Sydney. Well, this is a major change of pace. For thousands of kilometres on this trip, we've had vast open plains, pretty barren, a lot of red dirt. Here we are coming into the Blue Mountains on the western fringe of Sydney, and it's just spectacular. So different to anything we've been driving through. That's one of the things with this road trip, is we're getting to see such variety along the way, and the fact that this car's done it relatively easily is phenomenal. Well, that is a pretty special sight, the Sydney Harbour Bridge. It's so different to anything we've seen over the last 6,000 odd kilometres. So far removed from the dust, the red dirt, the openness that the outback does so well. So the Taycan has done amazingly well, a little bit less than 6,000 kilometres. Total electricity costs something like $600 or $700, so pretty amazing really when you think we got from Darwin to Sydney on that. Didn't even get a flat tyre, so swimming. So finally, the finish line, Bondi Beach. So this whole adventure started with a dream to cross the country in an electric car to cover not only some of the most remote parts of Australia, but also the world. And we've absolutely ticked that box. We've also had some incredible achievements along the way. Topping the Big Red Sand Dune was probably the highlight. Right now though, time to give this Taycan Cross Turismo a huge bath and start thinking about the next big adventure.